And so, absolutely, people taking care of people, letting people know that you matter. Because I would tell you, Julie, that everybody who sees me for the first time, and this has been consistent for 25 years, talk about how they don't want to be a junkie.
And when did you find out Teddy was using? How long ago?
I found out that the day that she was crashing. She was when she had to be revived from the Narcan the very first time, and they had to have a breathing tube down her throat. It was frightening. And strangely enough, she was rushed to the hospital yesterday.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Stories from the Field, a series of podcasts that dive into the issue of the evolving opioid epidemic in Minnesota. Our goal? Simple: to give voice to those who are or have experienced substance use disorder and to provide perspective into the issue. Hello, everybody. I'm Julie Bartke with Stories from the Field. Today, you will hear from Ann Vandalak. She's a mother whose story is one that so many can relate to. Her daughter is battling substance use disorder. Also joining us is Sue Purchase. She heads up an organization called Harm Reduction Sisters, which provides naloxone and other services to those living in northern Minnesota. We're going to begin now, though, with Ann. As I mentioned, she is the mother of a young woman who is alive because of naloxone. It's a substance that reverses an overdose. Ann, can you tell us about your daughter, your life, and living with this day after day?
Where do you even start? It's just, for one, she's thrown me into a world that I didn't know at all, and never been a drug user. And it's been quite an education that I choose not to have. She's been in and out of treatment. And strangely enough, she was rushed to the hospital yesterday because she has an infection in her arm. And she just got her paperwork to go back into treatment again and decided to kick it off with her last hurrah. And so, I just literally got back from the hospital to see how she is. She doesn't need surgery. She's going to be okay. But heroin is a nasty thing. And it's been a roller coaster ride and incredibly frightening because I've almost lost her several times.
And to that point, there is often a stigma attached to those who misuse opioids, and that's one of a lower socioeconomic status. Tell us a little bit about her upbringing.
Her dad is a retired Navy person. We divorced when the kids were pretty small, but a good upbringing. I been in media and definitely had a good income, a good home. I have a son who has just been incredibly successful living in Minneapolis. I mean, they couldn't be more opposite. Teddy dropped out of high school when she turned 18. She turned 18 on March 30th and could have graduated on May 5th. And now she's sitting here without a high school diploma. It started with her with the cutting. So when she was about 15 years old, she started cutting. And I got her into counseling. And, I can't explain. It has nothing to do with too much money or not enough money. We're, a really normal American family. But she progressed into marijuana, which was a trigger drug. What is the right word for that? I'm sorry. Gateway drug, sorry. And what she admits now, and then just progressively went into all these other drugs. It's not a life that I grew up with or that I've experienced. She, to feed her drugs, she danced at a strip joint for about a year, and just lived a lifestyle that was never part of mine or my son or her dad.
And when did you find out Teddy was using? How long ago?
Oh, I found out that the day that she was crashing. She was when she had to be revived from the Narcan the very first time.
How long has this journey been? Is probably a more
Well,
appropriate question.
the heroin part has been about 2 years. Yeah, it seems like 20, but it's been 2 years when I found her, and with her boyfriend. He had been using too, and I knew something was wrong. And they had to have a breathing tube down her throat. It was frightening. It was really, really scary.
You know, as a mother, this has to be just a really hard thing to live with. However, she is still alive. So do you have a sense of hope?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do have more hope. But then, I don't know how to say this, but I mean, it's just been so hard. And again, I almost lost her several times, and I'm trying not to get numb. And I've always been the one that's been there for her, that she could count on. I'm the last one left, and the rest of the family has given up on her. And something that came up, Julie, that I remember talking to you about is one of my coworkers that knows and has been around during, I've been at the same job since Teddy started on this path of drugs. And she said to me that I was a master enabler, and that if my daughter overdosed and died, it would be on my head. And that was one of the cruelest, hardest things for me to accept or understand. And basically, that's the impression people have. They don't think that there are people like me that have kids that are battling drug addiction. I'm sorry, I'm all over the board.
Sue, I'd like to talk a little bit deeper with you about this. We know that Teddy was revived by naloxone, also known as Narcan. You work very closely with this area, helping people gain access to naloxone throughout greater Minnesota. So tell us a little bit about what you do and some of your experiences.
So my experience in harm reduction is really based on personal experience, from my own experience growing up in northern Minnesota, from my experience being a mother to a daughter who also struggles with substance use, as I did myself. And so I have a different understanding of substance use and overdose, and prompted by my own life experience. And then the work that I have done for almost 25 years. And a lot of it has been in Minnesota, but to really focus on Duluth, I've been back I've been having Harm Reduction Sisters is almost 2 years old. And so it's a really busy program in terms of overdose prevention. And I provide so much more than that. It's hard to sort of encapsulate it, but I run a mobile harm reduction program based out of Duluth, but really serving all of northern Minnesota, and distributing clean works, clean supplies, clean syringes, along with Narcan, and then all the other equipment that is needed to safely inject, and hopefully to promote public health, that you don't share syringes and you don't share equipment, and helping people stay safe until they can do something different. And I think in terms of overdose and Narcan distribution, it's been challenging. And being able to have conversations with people about the importance of having naloxone. And a lot of times people don't fully appreciate or understand, all the implications of drug use. It's a much different scenario now than it has been in the past, where, traditionally it was methamphetamine and cocaine and what we knew as heroin. And it's not that way anymore. the heroin that we have is fentanyl, generally speaking, and it's laced in everything, and so there's no predicting, about overdoses. And trying to get education to people and working with them one-on-one in brief encounters. That's a lot of what I do, is talking to people about how important it is to have Narcan and to be prepared and to know how to use it and to really work to inform people to have a safer experience for people who are using drugs, until they, like such a time that people want to do something different.
But I think that really encapsulate things so well. And Sue, as I listen to you, I want to ask you more about the kind of response that you get from the general public throughout the Iron Range and throughout Duluth. Because you talk about providing supplies to people who use, and sometimes that might not be a really popular approach.
I would say that the people who need me the most love me. They're shocked and surprised that I live up here and that I deliver supplies to people, no questions asked. And I think that there's a lot of speculation about why I do it. There hasn't been a lot of what I would call like blowback. I think that it's overwhelmingly been supported, but I have not been in a position, to have maybe criticisms of this sort of model. I cut my teeth in harm reduction in HIV in the 1990s. And so, I know that I am convinced that doing harm reduction work, providing syringes and Narcan to people, save lives. And that is what is most important to me. I build a bridge to people who are living in isolation, geographic isolation, emotional isolation, and where drugs is really the friend that they have, right? And so many people have experienced trauma in their lives that, in my experience, makes it difficult to live inside your body. And so you want to do something different to lighten the load and to self-medicate. And I think that that makes so much sense to me. And I think that if there's opportunities for education and for people to think a little bit differently, it really helps. It helps this work.
So, Anne, you and I were talking a couple of years ago when the idea for this podcast was just beginning. And at that time, you knew your daughter had an opioid issue. You knew about naloxone, but you didn't carry it. So now you're meeting Sue. And what do you think of her work and what she's doing throughout the Iron Range and in Duluth?
Well, first of all, yeah, I remember telling you that I was shocked that I never thought to carry it. And that just kind of floored me. But no, after we met, I went straight to my pharmacy and got my own and carried it. And I continue to carry it with me. I think what Sue is doing is absolutely fabulous. It's fantastic. At least the kids that my daughter hangs with, I guess they're adults now, but they know about the different places to get the clean needles. They know how to get the Narcan. My daughter has a major supply of Narcan. And it's fantastic. I mean, who knows how many times she may have saved her own life, because I'm not getting the truth on these different things, of course. And I just think what you're doing is wonderful. And until they can get to that point, I mean, my daughter was suicidal, and it's been about 1.5 years since she's talked about trying to kill herself. Now she sees that she does have a future. And so even though she's still relapsing, the periods between relapsing is longer that she's sober. And, we can always hope that this is going to be the last time. But if it's not, then I want to make sure that there's people like you, so she's not in the hospital with an infection from a dirty needle. And I think what you're doing is a wonderful, wonderful service. So thank you.
And we want to clarify real quickly that nobody can save their own lives from naloxone, but having it and having those in the room with you when you are using that, and make sure they know where that naloxone is if it's needed. That's the important component here.
Right.
Sue, I wanted to ask you then, what if, to all the other people who are listening to this podcast right now, let's, throughout Minnesota, there are so many areas that are remote. And I would love for you to provide maybe some guidance if somebody's looking to starting up another mobile unit such as yours, or find a different, more unique way to increase access to naloxone. What would your advice and guidance be?
Well, I think that setting up a program like this isn't easy. I would say that right off the bat. But in terms of northern Minnesota and wanting to be able to distribute naloxone to like a community of folks, that can happen through me. What I do is not only do I do delivery, but there's this secondary network of people set up throughout the Iron Range and Itasca County who have enough supplies to take care of other people in their community. That's really how all of this works, is this amazing network of primarily women, but not exclusively, that are really working with me to support their friends, their family, their loved ones. And I think that it's very worthwhile. Certainly it's controversial work, the nature of it. But it's life-saving. It is a life-giving force. And that, supporting people to make incremental change in their life, and supporting any positive change as people choose to define it for themselves, and to have an ear that is not judgmental. Because I think that, like my way of thinking about this is that we know now more and more that it's traumatic episodes and complex trauma and PTSD that leads to drug use. And so do we want to punish people any more than we already have? Stigma and denying supplies to people, which is a lot of what has happened in northern Minnesota, that people don't have the access they need to take care of themselves. And so there's resulting trauma that comes from that, whether it's the overdose deaths of their family, their friends, or infections with HIV, with Hep C, endocarditis. I mean, the long list of repercussions are, like it just drives drug use.
And as you talk about that, we realize that everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own reason for turning to drugs, for whatever that reason is, whether it is trauma or recreation. We've seen that over and over again. I'd like, Anne, if you could, you right now have the ears of many, many people in Minnesota. Many of those could be parents who are experiencing the same thing you're experiencing right now. And this idea that recovery is possible, that light might be dimmer for some than it is for others, brighter for some. And what would you like to say to parents and to caregivers and friends of those who are experiencing something very similar to you, seeing a loved one who, is trying to turn things around?
Thanks for asking me that, because that, of course, has come up on so many occasions. And I think that the biggest advice is just to never stop loving them and never stop caring. And, I during Teddy's suicidal time, it was devastating, because she really didn't want to be on this earth anymore. And I'd hear that on an ongoing basis. And I just kept loving her and kept hanging on. And, I think we're going to get through this. I am not a tough love person. I just did it from my gut. And yeah, I know she was using again this week, but again, she's getting better. And those times of sobriety are getting much, much longer. I've never stopped caring about her. And, I'm careful about giving her money, of course, and buy her groceries instead. But just never giving up on her, because, she's my baby girl, and I love her to death. And I just want to make sure that she has a future, and we talk future all the time, constantly talking future.
And are you optimistic?
I am. I think, I think she's going to make it. She's getting closer, and her choices have still been bad. This last deal was, she got her $600 check. Sorry, I can't even think of the name right now.
The stimulus check, yeah.
The stimulus check, thank you.
Mhm.
And just having that kind of money, and she knew she was going back in, because we've been getting to that point of getting her back into treatment. And she went and blew it all on heroin.
How are you practicing self-care, the caregiver of the person who is going through all of this? Do you have a support network?
I do. As a matter of fact, it's funny, because in my building is the Duluth Public Health, Minnesota Department of Health, the Duluth version. And there's a woman there that we've gotten real close, and she has a son that's been in recovery, and he's been in recovery for about 20 years. So I do find myself feeling a little bit lucky for that. But I've got several friends, not the friend that said that, of course, but a lot of friends that helped me get through. My son's been just a rock. And but yeah, it's I have to remember and remind myself to take care of myself too. It's a slippery slope.
Sue, I'd like to close with one last question for you. As you travel through greater Minnesota, the northern part of it in particular, do you find yourself also being the conveyor of optimism?
I think that I am. And, I think that it's absolutely crucial, and to give people some perspective. It's been a year of COVID, and the other needle exchange programs shut down up here. There's one that is reopened, but the other one is primarily closed. I've been super busy. And but it's really so rewarding and so, I would say, invigorating and inspiring, because what I try to do in talking to people is how really to support and encourage people, that any positive change, and that we're in this together, and we are building community, and that we are providing low-level guerrilla healthcare to people who need it the most. And so absolutely, people taking care of people, letting people know that you matter. Because I would tell you, Julie, that everybody who sees me for the first time, and this has been consistent for 25 years, talk about how they don't want to be a junkie, and they talk about their shame. And what I say, I don't accept the word addict. And, recovery doesn't really do it for me either, but I get where people are trying to go, and that people are people. There's somebody's daughter, there's somebody's mother, a sister. They contribute so much more to this world. But what we do is we focus on the drugs. And I don't think that we do that to people who consume alcohol, or to, overeating or heart disease, but we find that it's okay and open warfare on people who are struggling with mental health and homelessness and all the other isms that come to people in this life and trying to navigate it. So I absolutely try to build people up and encourage and support them. And in doing harm reduction work, my whole thing is, people will oftentimes say, Sue, when I get sober, I want to do what you do. And I say, you can do it now.
Oh, Sue, I will consider this podcast a success if your phone starts ringing off the hook and your email fills up with people asking for advice and guidance on how to move forward with the kind of work that you do. Sue, Ann, Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough for sharing your insight and your perspectives.
With Stories from the Field, I'm Julie Bartke with the Minnesota Department of Health. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.